Hello, and welcome to the Simply Business Interview Podcast, a podcast created by business owners for business owners. I am your host, John Jennings. And I believe that most business owners are working way too hard for much too little. And one of our issues is that we overcomplexify things. I believe the answers are almost always within us or within our reach. I like to say that I'm a simple man with simple ideas. So welcome to Simply Business. All right, today I am joined by Henry Camp, who's the president of Shipper Solutions. Henry, thanks first for joining us. I'm looking forward to hearing your story. Sounds like a fascinating one. So why don't you just first tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay, well, I'm a fellow that spent 10 years away from Louisville and then either getting educated or delivering education, and been here since my whole life, and 44 years coming up at my business, at this business, Shipper Solutions, and which is names changed from, used to be Shipper Supply Company, but we've kind of modified it a little bit by adding third-party logistics to the distribution business, and 70 something years in business, and so we're rolling on.
Yeah. So you're different from most of the people I interview on here because 44 years in one company. That's amazing, and most of that has been as the president, right?
Yeah, I bought the company 5 years in when I was 28 years old.
Wow.
And by the way, if anybody's listening to this, if you're wondering whether you want to own a business at some point, try it when you're 28 years old and you're not having a bunch of kids and other priorities and things like that. It works better.
Yeah.
It's harder because you don't know very much when you're young.
There's almost a window, like, there, or you have to wait till, like I did, wait till after the kids were gone and then said, okay, now I want to start my business now that I'm free from all that.
Right.
So that's interesting. So what inspired you at 28 to do something that most 28-year-old people don't do?
Well, I had to get rid of my father, who was the previous owner of the business, and so
okay.
There was no way. He's the one that got me in business in the first place, but that goes back to college. He gave me $300 and said, "Here's, son, I want you to go out and have fun, have a beer, and enjoy your college time with this $300 as your allowance." And I said, "Great." So I said, "What do I have to buy out of this?" "Well, you books and stuff like that." So I paid $282.75 for my books. And I wrote him a note that said, "Hey, I'm out of that money. You want to send some more?" And he says, "Well, give me a full accounting of everything you spent it on." I was like, I can imagine this being a bad situation. So I went into business for myself then, selling stereos. I took the SS from Shipper Supply and made Sound Supply so I could have the same, or I would have a logo, look legit.
There you go.
But that got me through college and actually spread out to a few other college campuses. And then after college, I came back and worked with my dad for a little while, and he shared with me what I needed to know. But we were both hard-headed people, and so it was better for one of us to run it, not two of us. So
Got it.
that's what happened.
Yeah. That was funny. That reminds me, my college, it was, my parents paid, gave me a food allowance and basically said, if you want to do anything more than that, you got to figure it out, basically. And so I with a buddy of mine, we started a DJ business. We went around and DJ parties and stuff. It was a blast. Didn't make a whole lot of money. It made enough to.
But that sounds a lot more fun than what I was doing. But I was actually working.
Maybe I bought some stuff from you. Who knows?
Might have. A lot of people did.
That's a cool story. So one of the things you mentioned before we started this, you talked about how you've really built the company so that you're working on the business, not in the business. Man, that's a dream of every business owner I work with. So you've apparently cracked that code. So tell us a little bit about how you got there and how that works.
That's it, because you have to. It's about money, right? If you could hire somebody to do something who is as committed to you, and you could afford that, you probably would. Since most of us starting business, we can't. We do it ourselves. Some people are control freaks. They don't want to relinquish control. They can do it better than the other people. So why would they give that job to someone else? I was a let it go kind of laissez-faire manager, but I didn't have the money at first. And so the question was how to grow the company up and get that money. And we did a pretty good job of that, just growing sales, satisfying customers well, and so forth. And but there was a point where I had 14 people reporting directly to me, and there were 15 people in the company, including me. So that got to be too much. About that time, and this is 25 years ago, I joined Vistage. It was called Tech back then, but it's a CEO roundtable group. And I've been in there for, I guess, 26 years probably now, coming up on 26. And that was a fantastic thing because you hear speakers that come in and talk about these types of things. You're not all alone. You have other people to help solve problems. And so Vistage was a big contributor for me. I remember when I first started, the chair would have to call me to remind me it was the day that we had our meeting because I was that disorganized, busy trying to do too many things. Right. And nowadays, it's just one of my favorite days of the month to go and help other people solve their problems.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. So speaking of problems, what when you look back over 4 decades of leadership, what's one of those challenges, one of those problems that you're particularly proud of solving?
Yeah, it's a good question. There are two of them. The first one was my father, a buddy of my father's, who was a salesperson working for the company for years. His son went to work for me. So we were kind of both 2 generations. I lost a piece of business to a customer that he had brought in that really hurt me. And it was Square D down in Lexington. And we were selling them reinforced gum tape. And it was something that my supplier provided me on consignment at the time, which was a huge thing. I explained to them, I can't really grow the business as fast because I don't have that much cash. But you guys got cash. Give me the tape. I'll pay you later when I sell it. We'll get pretty fast turns and so forth. Well, this tape that went to Square D, we shipped a skid of the wrong tape to somebody, but didn't know we had done it. So we're missing the tape that they needed. And we screwed that up 3 times in 6 months. And so it was inventory accuracy, which killed me. And I got so fed up with it that we bought barcode scanners. We put a repeater out there in the warehouse, and we went to work on it. We started measuring inventory accuracy in parts per million instead of percentages. And my goal was to get 6 sigma, which is 3.4 parts per million, which would, for us, would mean an error every 3 years.
Wow.
And we never got to 3.4, but did get to 5. Couldn't get that last 1.6. I don't know what my problem was, but
well, that's a tough hurdle to get to. I mean, it becomes a law of diminishing returns. You can't. It's really difficult to make those final little incremental improvements.
So eventually something goes wrong, but we measured pretty much an acid test. So it was if I got 5 parts per million error rate, it was just about perfect. And I was trying to get a customer down in Bowling Green to give me a price increase, which was going to amount to about $5,000 a year. And I really needed it. It was 2% price increase. I was like, I got to have this. And how come we should give it to you? Well, because I'm perfect on my inventory accuracy. I'll never make a mistake for you. So they laughed at me. Tears ran out of my eyes. There were tears of laughter coming out of their eyes. And they said, well, if you don't have it, we'll just buy it from the other guy. You're not so special. And it's not that big of a deal for us to get it from someplace else. So we can't give you that. But then they said, but you ought to manage our inventory for us because we can't manage our inventory that well. And like a long story short, I ended up starting a new business and managing inventory for this company all down in the Caribbean basin. And then, believe it or not, the little guy from Louisville, Kentucky, sold the business 25 years later to Sri Lankans who bought it during the middle of COVID at a huge, huge price. So you can't make it up. I mean, things are weird. So that's the first thing. It was not the most important thing, but the first thing that we did. The second one was, okay, now that you know what inventory you have, how do you make sure that inventory works for you? How do you get a return on that inventory? And so I realized that what everybody else is trying to do is wrong, which is to have a forecast of demand planning to know what you're going to sell, where your customers don't even know what they're going to buy. My customers work on the OSWO inventory management program, OSWO. Oh shit, we're out. So so
I haven't heard that one.
they don't know what they're going to buy. My stuff is not important stuff, packaging equipment, tape to seal a box, stretch wrap film to hold the boxes together. If they run out of it, they can get it from somebody. Um, so we created a software 20 years ago now called Elucidate, which manages inventory buffers. So the consequence of Elucidate, I won't bore you with all the details of it, but the consequence of it is that the inventory can go in half, and the shortages disappear by a factor of 10. So you're 10 times more likely to have it in stock, and you have half as much inventory investment. And that has been, I've literally been all over the world bringing that advantage to different companies like Adidas in Germany, and we call it Adidas, but it's Adidasler, so you don't call it Adidas to them. It's like this.
Okay.
They give you a look. But I've been to China, I've been, Turkey, I've, all over the place with the software. And now I'm trying to bring it to Louisville. I'm trying to use Elucidate for the benefit of our customers here in Louisville.
Very cool.
So before I was consulting. So now what we're doing is just providing the service. So this means the customer or the client doesn't have to even learn anything. It just gets done for them the way it should be done.
You really hit on something in both those stories. It's you found something that you do well that others can't do, and figured out how to apply value to that and productize it. One of my early clients was a metals manufacturing firm, and they did kind of the same kind of thing. They basically did consignment inventory for their clients and essentially managed their inventory, and because of that, they could charge a premium. And they dominated the market while not being the cheapest. And so when we started looking at how can they grow, we started looking at, okay, what are some other industries that are like that they can apply that same concept to, but in with a different raw material. And they ended up finding 2 or 3 and just started going, crazy with growth, because it's like, we can take that same idea and replicate it.
Applies over here and applies over there.
Yeah. It's so similar to what that struck a bell,
So I learned a lot of this stuff from a guy named Ellie Goldratt, who since passed away back in 2011. But he wrote a famous book called The Goal. And it was his son and I are still good friends. Ellie and I were good friends. He's Israeli. But The Goal was a breakthrough for me. I read this book and I was just like, oh, and that's what gave me the insight to do this. So I'm basically taking his stuff. But Ellie talked about a decisive competitive edge. And of course, you want it to be a lasting decisive competitive edge. And it has 5 attributes. And for the people that are listening to this podcast, you want to be able to do something, just like you said, John, that nobody else can do, a capability nobody else has. In a big enough market that it makes a difference, which you also said, and without sort of, and you want to have the capabilities to capitalize on it without taking real risks and without exhausting your resources. Those are the only 5 things. If you have that, you have these decisive competitive edges, and they'll last so long that if you're like me, you'll get bored and have to think of something else, because you would like competitors eventually to come after you so that you would have to do some more innovation. But at least I get bored. But it's cool.
Well, so you're talking about getting bored earlier, and we don't have time to go deep into it, but tell the listeners about your side gig, we'll call it, this new venture, like $400 million side gig. This is fascinating to me.
So I've realized I started a little private equity fund maybe 10 years ago. And so we bought some companies. And so I had some side gigs already going. One of them was a company that buys commercial aircraft engines and tears them down when they're run out. They're not worth repairing anymore, tears them down for parts and provides those parts into the overhauls of other of the same engine type. And during COVID, we did a great job. I mean, we used the inventory buffer management software that I mentioned. So sales went from 3 million to 25 million. So we're very happy. And then the next thing that happened was COVID struck, and sales went from 25 million to 1 million. This was not as good. And so now the question is,
Well,
let me
not the million part, but I can relate the percentage.
let me think of the way out of this, and I'm not coming up with anything. And my old mentor, Ellie Goldrat again, said, Henry, if you can't solve a problem, solve a bigger problem. So I started looking out, broader in the industry, and I started looking further out in time. So it kind of went this way and this way both. And what I realized was that airlines don't need to do maintenance on engines when there are nobody flying, because they have extra engines lying around that they can work on. And so that's the situation that we were in. And what happened to us was we realized that when they come back to work, right now we're back to being more than 2019, both in wide bodies and narrow body engines. So since that's the case, we now have to fly more people with fewer planes, which seems complicated. So the only way to get out of that jam is to overhaul more engines. So the Aviation Protection Group was my latest thing I came up with about a year ago. And now we're raised about $80 million so far. Got to get another 320 for $400 million. And then when we do that, we'll offer the marketplace, instead of 10 months waiting time to get your engine overhauled, we're going to offer them 1 month turnaround to get your engine overhauled, but it costs 4 times as much for the labor. And that seems like a lot. It's like a $1.6 million or something like that. For the extra charge, instead of 400,000 might be $1.6 million, but it saves an airline $1 million a week.
Yeah.
To get one plane back up and running. They can make $1 million a week on each plane. So it's a huge benefit for them.
Sure.
Huge. So that's what's going. Looks like it's going to get off the ground. I've got a potential investor in India. Somebody just asked me today, what about the crown princes of the Middle East? And so it's if you could sell your business to Sri Lankans, this is possible too, even if you just live in Brownsboro, Kentucky.
Well, that's fascinating, and we were talking before. You're right down the street from me practically, and we've never crossed paths, but fascinated by your story. If people want to learn more about your company or connect with you, how's the best way for them to
hit me at hcamp@ssco.pro. So SS like Shippers Solutions company, short for company.pro, because it's better to be professional than common. So
I like that. That's good. You've given some great advice, and you
better start that over again without that dog doing it. We can edit that out.
Yeah, that's okay. He's trying to get his own 2 cents worth in, right?
Yeah.
But you give him some great advice. Then that part about how to scale your business. And tell me that book again. I know we got it recorded.
It's The Goal.
The Goal.
Yeah. It came out in 1984. I think it's been translated into 27 different languages, and I think it just crossed 10 million copies sold. So with respect to business books, not self-help books like Think and Grow Rich, but this is probably the top selling business book in the world ever.
Yeah, that's one for people certainly to check out for sure.
Yeah.
So, love getting just practical advice like that from someone who's walked many more miles than a lot of us. So
that's why my knee hurts, isn't it?
What's that?
That's why my knee hurts, isn't it?
Of course. I don't know what my excuse is, but we'll end with that. But thank you, Henry, so much. It's been fascinating hearing your story, and I know my listeners are gonna enjoy it as well. Thank you.
Good talking to you, John. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you liked it, please share or like it on whatever platform you use. You can find me on social media. On most platforms, I'm John K. Jennings. My first book is also available. Your Baby is Ugly tells you about 10 truths that business owners need to hear, but often won't, and how to overcome them. You can find it on Amazon. Just search for Your Baby is Ugly. And be watching for our next episode, where I'll interview another business owner who will share their stories and insights into what it's like to create a great business.